any further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our speaker today, Suzanne. And let me just give you a little bit of a background to Suzanne. Suzanne is a co-founder and director of global initiatives of the Yellow Tulip Project. Suzanne co-founded the Yellow Tulip Project in 2016 and served as the project's executive director from its creation until June 2023. She currently serves as the Director of Global Initiatives. She is an out-of-the-box thinker who loves working on projects that make a positive impact on this messy but beautiful world. Prior to her work as a mental health activist, Suzanne has over 30 years of experience in building understanding and cross-cultural awareness as an adjunct professor and principal of an intercultural consulting company. Last November, she completed her MSc in Global Mental Health and Society from the University of Edinburgh, where she received the Sir William Darling Memorial Prize, awarded to the individual who has done the most to enhance the reputation of the university, which is quite an accolade, I would suggest. She is currently working on projects that explore stigma across cultures and strength-based approaches to addressing mental health challenges. And we're delighted to have her with us today. She's not at the University of Edinburgh right this second. She is in sunnier climes, although we're not doing too badly today here. So Suzanne, without any further ado, please share your presentation and let's get started. Thank you.
I will. Thank you so much, Jo. And I'm so happy and honored to be here. Good afternoon to most of you. It's good morning for me. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm calling in from an island off the coast of Portland, Maine. Maine is a state in the United States that a lot of people have never heard of. It's 2 hours north of Boston, the furthest northeast state. But Maine is known for its islands, ocean, rugged beauty, lakes, hardy people. And so the year I spent in Scotland, I felt so at home because Scotland is similar in that natural beauty, rugged people. It was I'm really, really excited to be here today. I'm sharing my findings from my dissertation. This time last year, I was just beginning to step into my research. So it's really meaningful that exactly a year later, here I am presenting my findings. It also is really important that I'm presenting today, which falls right in the middle of Mental Health Awareness Month. And as so many people know, from my perspective, I think we should talk about mental health, not just 1 month. I think we should talk about it all day, every day. I think we always need to remind people that they're not alone, that there's help, there's hope. And it's a strength to ask for help. But the fact that even this 1 month, it's so important, particularly right now, there's so many people going through so much mental distress. So talking about this particular topic right now is just really appropriate, and I'm really excited to be here. And as many of you know, because you're all in these garden spaces, the mental health connection to being in nature, being outdoors, being in gardens is we knew that to begin with, but the research findings, the literature review just completely echoes that. In fact, 2 weeks ago in the New York Times here in the United States, there was a big article about gardening and physical and mental health. And just being outside, just getting your hands dirty in the garden spaces can be so physically good for you, so mentally good for you. But what I'm focusing on today is the practitioners who offer STH programming inside mental health gardens. There's been so much written about benefits of nature-based interventions, benefits of green care, blue care, benefits for participants who access the services, but almost nothing was written about the people who work in the garden spaces. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Before we do, I want to tell you a little bit about me. So why I just turned 60 in February of this year. Why, when I was 59 years old, did I go back to graduate school? And when I showed up at the University of Edinburgh, I was older than all my classmates, older than all of my professors. And here I was walking around with my student lanyard on. But so I'm just going to give you a brief backstory. So this is me and my daughter, Julia. When she was 15, a sophomore in high school, I guess for you, that's a second year secondary school. Before the school year began, we took a walk together and she said, Mom, I need to talk to you. I want to let you know that I'm depressed and I've been purposely cutting myself and I want to get healthy and I want you to know. So for me, Julia's my baby. I have two older boys and how could this be? How did I miss this? As a parent, all you want is your children to be healthy and happy. And I thought I was a good mom and I didn't know I missed that. So that was really impactful. And then on Halloween, her best friend Peyton took her own life. And then 4 months later, her second best friend, Beata, took her own life. So here's my daughter alone, struggling with her own mental health, self-harm, loses her two best friends to suicide in a 4-month period. And it was a really, really, as you can imagine, such incredibly dark, and we were in a despair. It was so painful. Yellow was Peyton's favorite color. The tulip was Beata's favorite flower. The yellow tulip is the flower of hope. So we had an idea to bring people together and plant a hope garden during Mental Health Awareness Week in October. Bring community members together to get their hands dirty, plant a garden together. And in that garden space, we had beautiful poetry, music, wellness activities. It was simple, a mother-daughter team with an idea. And it spread and it spread and it spread. And then when the tulips come up, they're so beautiful and proud. At that time, I didn't know anything about gardens. I wasn't a gardener. I didn't know anything about planting tulips, but I learned that tulips need to be planted close together. And tulips go through cold, dark times, and then they come up strong and beautiful. And if that's not a metaphor for anybody suffering from mental health issues, that you shouldn't be alone. You can't see mental health issues. You don't know what people are going through. So the metaphor of community and coming together was so beautiful. We started this organization. I ran it for 7 years. And then I realized that nonprofit management wasn't my favorite thing. I loved the gardens, the storytelling, all the things that we did. But as an executive director, you've got to apply for grants and nonprofit and donors. So I was like, nah. So I actually stepped out and wanted to look at stigma across cultures and wanted to understand how other countries address mental health. What are other community-based approaches to addressing mental health? So I applied to the program Global Mental Health at the University of Edinburgh. I went back to school. And then when it came time to my dissertation, I saw that there was a faculty-led dissertation on the social therapeutic horticulture practitioners in Scotland working in mental health gardens. So when I read that, I was like, oh, this is written for me. So it was faculty led and working with Trellis, and what an incredible experience to do my research. If I felt actually like a kid at the candy shop, because I got to meet the nicest people. I got to sit in the most beautiful garden spaces, and I got to learn so much of the role of the therapeutic horticulture, the practitioners. So that's enough about me. Now, before we jump into my research, I want to talk a little bit again about why this matters, because social therapeutic horticulture has a connection to mental health. So what's going on right now with the state of mental health? And as I mentioned earlier, I'm just going to touch on a little bit about the state of global mental health, the state of mental health in Scotland. And I warn you, it's not optimistic figures, but just briefly to sort of frame the research that's coming next, just to frame why this all matters. So looking over here at the state of global mental health, just so many people are suffering. You could read these facts. Youth globally are experiencing the greatest decline in mental well-being. 1 in every 3 youth experience mental distress. Across the globe, suicide rates continue to rise, with death by suicide accounting for 1 in every 100 deaths. Now, these are not just facts and figures on a PowerPoint slide. This is real. There's a crisis of youth mental health. I got a phone call 2 weeks ago from a mother who had just lost her 13-year-old child to suicide. So this issue is so real and so needed to find creative, innovative approaches to address this topic. One of the things I learned in my global mental health course is, first of all, this is such a global issue, and stigma is a global issue. And there's something we talk about, there's a treatment gap between there's not enough money, there's not enough therapists, there's not enough access to resources. There's such a gap between the need and the people who need support. So looking at community-based interventions like gardens are a creative approach to addressing the mental health crisis that we're in. Again, it's not like solving the problem, but there's such data that shows the impact of time outdoors, time connected with nature, time connecting with other people is so helpful and so healing. So that's the big broad stroke. Then looking at mental health in Scotland, this was from a report from 2023, looking at mental health in Scotland. And again, these figures are not very upbeat. We're seeing that 1 in 4 people will suffer from a mental health issue. The lifespan people suffering from mental health issues is considerably shorter. Think about that. This fact, number 3, really was true for me when I was looking for help for my daughter, definitely true in Scotland, that people waited over a year to begin psychological therapies. Think about that. If you have to wait over a year to get help, that's a really big problem. I know, again, for me with my daughter, when she left to go to college, she needed to go right into the support social worker on campus to tell her story of trauma and loss. And it was 3 months before she can get an appointment with a school therapist. So this is a real issue. And then again, the impact it has on the budget, on the economy with the poor mental health was reported at $8.8 billion. Or pounds. That's a lot of money. So again, just wanted to frame out the why and bring back the connection to mental health, because the focus was on mental health gardens. And then also just a connection with people in general. I know I'm on my phone too much. I try to have digital detox days where I put my phone away, but I'm always peeking. But young people, think about this number. Young people spend on average 4.8 hours a day on social media. And young people are feeling disconnected. There's huge issues of social isolation, huge issue with youth mental health crisis, and they're disconnected. They're not having real conversations. So again, getting people outside, off their phones, off screens, back to nature is such an important step to move towards for addressing these issues. So now I'm going to step into what I was tasked to look into. These are the key research questions, and then we'll go into my findings. So the key research questions were, what are the qualifications and backgrounds of STH practitioners? Where are they coming from? What backgrounds do they have? Nothing has been written about that. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. How do the people who come to the gardens, how do they access them? Do they just walk in? Do they need a referral? Do they need a diagnosis? How do they get to the gardens? What do the programs look like when you get to the garden? If you show up for a Monday morning session, what does the session look like? What do the STH practitioners do? How do they organize their time in the garden spaces? And how often do they come? Once a week, once a month? Again, this is all information that had never been gathered. So it was really hopefully helpful to Trellis and other folks about knowing more about access to the garden spaces and what do they do? Again, what do they do? What does a session look like? Are their sessions evaluated? If so, what tools are they using? Is there any standard evaluation tools? How do they evaluate their work? Then what are the benefits for the people who come to the garden spaces, for the participants? Now, again, I didn't interview the participants. So this is the perceived benefits from the practitioners that I interviewed, what they thought the benefits were for the clients that they see come to the garden sessions. And then what are the benefits for them? What are they getting out of the work that they do? So what did I do? How did I gather this information? I worked with Trellis, and the faculty member I worked with was Dr. Autumn Roche Marsh in the School of Political Social Science. She's a social worker. It was qualitative research. It was interviews, survey. That was how I got my information. I had sent the interview. Trellis helped me identify all the mental health focused gardens in their network. So I sent a survey out to all the people in their network that met that criteria and received 22 responses. And then I had interviews with 7 different gardens that I went to, practitioners. And the criteria for the gardens that I went to, because I would have loved to have gone to Shetland and Orkney and Isle of Skye and all these Glencoe, all these beautiful places in Scotland. But because the master's degree was pretty limited, I had to focus on gardens that I could easily jump on a train or a bus about an hour away. So they're all relatively close to Edinburgh. And we wanted a mixture of gardens. So we went to urban gardens, hospital gardens, youth gardens, a range of different gardens that I visited. So here, I'm going to just walk through some of the gardens that I visited. First, I went up to Perth. And for me, not being from Scotland, not having a lot of background in gardening, it was such an incredible, it was such a beautiful experience to meet the kindest people and sit in these beautiful gardens. So here I am in Perth, walking down a little alleyway that I don't know what's happening. And then we opened up this space. And here this gorgeous, gorgeous garden unfolds. And it's a fully functioning market garden. They grow food for local restaurants and for the food bank. It's a member-led organization. And again, just thriving, bustling. They have poetry and music and things that happen inside this little garden wall. You would never notice it as you're walking down the street. And then there you are. Next, I went to North Berwick. We say Berwick in the United States, so I always had to correct myself. This was a youth-focused garden, herb space. And what was, again, this garden space, the walls of the garden are 1,000-year-old wall. Again, like our country in the United States, it's, 200-year history. So amazing to sit in these old spaces. This garden serves youth who have mental health issues. They work with a social worker at their school who recommends them to come to these garden spaces and then go back to school. And it was really, I sat in the garden as I see the young people coming in and out. And the person I spoke to just said that sometimes they just need to sit in that yurt and have a cup of tea. And then they've noticed that people who started initially were like, I don't know what this is, and kind of quiet and not engaging. And as they continue to come, they just saw this young person changing before their eyes because they grabbed the hoe, grabbed the rake, put their gloves on, started working in the garden. And it just was such a shift that was in real time being able to see. Then I went to Dunbar and I went to the Ridge, and the Ridge serves people, vulnerable community members that are impacted by poverty, mental health, substance abuse. It's a food bank. There's a lot of things that go on, but I was specifically meeting with the STH practitioner working in these beautiful gardens. And again, a lot of these were down these alleyways. I think maybe they're called a close. Is it a close maybe in Scotland? I'm not sure, but we say alleyways. Down this alleyway, you'd never know. And then you open these spaces that are just remarkable. Urban Roots is in Glasgow. This is one of the more urban gardens that I went to. And Urban Roots is a mission to improve the health and environment of South Glasgow. They have 11 different garden projects, from gardens working with refugees, specific projects working with women. This was the mental health garden. And again, it was just really exciting to see these gardens at work with people coming in for their sessions, getting their hands dirty, working together on a project. Then back up to Perth to the Walled Garden and Wisecraft, which there are two different sites, and they offer mental well-being support for anyone ages 16 or older. Back to Edinburgh, the Redwall Walled Garden is open to the public. Anyone in the Edinburgh area, I recommend going to see it. It's so beautiful. It's really old. It goes back to the 18th century, and it is operated by Sam's Scottish mental health organization. And it was the only garden that I went to that a diagnosis is required to come to the garden spaces. Others were like, just you can show up if you feel that you need to, or if you're recommended to go, but you needed a diagnosis to go to this one. And then finally, Strathendon Hospital and Garden Hospital in Fife was the only hospital-based garden that I visited. And this goes back to 1857, to the Victorian era, where these psychiatric hospitals were built. So it has a long history, beautiful gardens. The gardens, again, are open to the public. They had traditionally, the practitioners had traditionally worked more with occupational therapy, but now they're bringing more mental health component into their work. And there's hope that they can actually separate mental health therapy sessions from the occupational sessions. So that is the range of the gardens that I looked at. And now we're jumping into what did I find out? So first question, qualifications. What are the backgrounds? What do they come from? And based on the surveys that I came from here, most are coming from horticulture background. And then after that, it's a range of social care, either social care, social work, nursing, anything under that umbrella. The interviews that I had, only 2 of the 7 people that I interviewed had any mental health background. They all entered as horticulturalists. But we're learning as they went, but we're definitely later, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but they're definitely interested in a certificate program that focused on mental health and the STH certificate program that you're working on. So here are the backgrounds. Why did they enter this field? And several themes surfaced. There are 4 different themes, and for each theme, I'm going to just introduce it, the love of gardening, and then share some quotes, representative quotes that I got from the practitioners that I met with. So number 1, without doubt, was the love of gardening and the love of working outdoors. And here's a couple quotes I think just capture that so completely. Here we have the opportunity to work outdoors, which for me maintains my own well-being. Being in the garden transports you from all the daily grind, the daily decision making, all the stuff that you're trying to figure out, all of those thoughts. It sort of turns itself off and just resets everything. That's why I do what I do. And I can just take a little detour and share my daughter's experience, who actually works as a garden educator in California at an elementary school. It's exactly the same for her. Being outdoors, working with kids, tending to plants, it's so healing and so important. The second theme that came up for all the practitioners was the desire to help others. They entered this field because there was a theme of just love of helping people, love of connecting with people and helping them. And again, here's some quotes that I thought were really powerful. It's wonderful to combine a love of horticulture with compassion for people and to feel like you're helping to improve people's lives and better the community. I've never felt so valued ever as a professional, as a woman. I've never felt so needed, just needed in the right place, in the right time, doing the good work. So that is just a few representative quotes, but I have so many quotes from the different practitioners that I met with that just capture how meaningful their work is. Theme 3, the personal connection to mental health. Again, they're working in gardens that serve people with mental health issues. They could be working at a whole range of different gardens because Trellis has a whole bunch of different gardens for gardens at prisons, gardens with women, different gardens, but they chose these gardens. A lot of them had this personal connection. And here again, I'm a horticulturalist, but my entire life is grounded in mental health. I worked as an ecologist and then got into horticulture, and I've always been very interested in connecting people with nature and the mental health benefits that it brings. I've had my own mental health challenges and over the years and know how restorative it can be spending time in a garden. The last theme was a theme of a sense of purpose and fulfillment. And it's actually interesting when we get to the conversation later about the participants and the benefits for the participants. So many are the same, the sense of purpose, the sense of achievement. It's so interesting how similar these issues are. But here's another representative quote. Wonderful to combine a love of horticulture with compassion for people and to feel like you're helping to improve people's lives and better the community. What a community garden does is allows people to be human. And I just love this quote because a lot of the practitioners that I met with said, when they step into the garden, they are not about their diagnosis. They are not about, oh, you're so, they just are human. And that came out over and over again in all these conversations I had. And then here, very profound philosophical stuff. We know how much value this work has, experiencing those small moments of beauty in the garden when you're sitting there covered in mud, and the conversations that can happen are the most beautiful things between shared humanity. It's just holding space for life. Very special, profound work. And again, I just felt like it was so beautiful how deeply the people I met cared for what they do and the people they're helping. So we talked about why they entered the field and what their qualifications are. So now what goes on in the gardens? What do they do? And so I'm going to share the 4 prominent themes that came up. Before I do, I love this quote. We don't sit around and talk about how your mental health is, but we read together. And as we're reading, these conversations unfold. So I think what's interesting is that these aren't group therapy sessions where they sit in a circle and share how they feel about their anxiety, depression, social isolation. They're gardening together. And as they garden, it's true, these conversations unfold. So here's the actual, like, what goes on. Of the correspondence, 21 said gardening, watering, weeding, composting, harvesting produce, just basic garden activities. After that, we have gardening plus social activities like garden, but then cooking a meal together, having tea. And the cooking a meal together, that came up in a lot of interesting conversations I had, that sense of achievement, which is actually different. There's, I've learned in my research about green prescribing, which is gardens, farm care, forest therapy, anything that has to do with the earth and green things, blue prescribing, lakes, water, any water related activities. But gardening is specific because you're growing something from a seed. And then you have this sense of achievement when it grows and you get to watch it bloom and you get to watch it. And if you're growing vegetables, then you pick it and then you eat it. And sitting together in the bothy having a meal is unlike any other form of green therapy. So I thought that was really cool just to see just how different that specific, that is, to gardens and social therapeutic horticulture. And then beyond gardening, there's creative activities like poetry and dancing and wreath making, and then mindfulness activities. 3 people responded of, breath work, meditation, creating mandalas. So that's a sort of overview of what people are doing. How do they get to the gardens? Well, this part is unfortunately a little bit in the gray area because the 66.7% is other. So that would be someone to pick up my research and continue to find out a little bit more. But what I found out that the general referral routes are from the general practitioner, a care worker, or self-referral. And like, for example, like urban routes, they're so well known in the Glasgow community. So people hear about it and think, oh, maybe this will be for me. So people can just walk in, choose to attend these, except for the case of, like I said, Red Hall, you need a diagnosis and a prescription to come into the garden space. So it's kind of a range. Then who decides? From the survey, 21 people said that the horticulture staff decides the activities. And then there were people that said, 8 people said that the staff and the participants decide together. I think when I met with the interviews that I had, it was more mixed, and there was a feeling in the mental health language, there's an expression, nothing about us without us, and that there was a feeling that the participants have agency in deciding what activities they want to do. So it was a mix between the practitioners themselves and the clients who come into the garden spaces. So how often do they come? Most come weekly. Most come 1 or 2 times a week. And that was just interesting to know that, that I think they get more benefit if it's a regular thing that they do. Are these programs evaluated? Yeah, they are. There's 66.7% say they are evaluated. What are they using? And here's just a range of the things that they're using, the tools that they use. And you can see here it ranges from formal assessments, session diaries, group conversations. One thing that definitely came up was the interest in learning more about a standardized way to evaluate these programs. So that's something, again, for further conversation, but it was something that kept coming up, that we would like to have help in coming up with the best way to address evaluation. So it is standardized. So what are the benefits for the participants? Again, similar to what we talked about earlier, a sense of purpose and achievement. And again, we know how much value this work has. It's the small moments of beauty in the garden when you're sitting there. Oh, I think I read that one already. I'm going to skip that one. Inside these garden walls, everyone is a gardener. They leave their diagnosis outside the garden walls. Here in the garden, there's no stigma, just a place to be that provides a sense of purpose and connections. They change so much in the garden, social connections, feeling part of the community, realizing their strengths, giving themselves credit. So that sense of achievement and purpose was so prevalent in all the conversations I had. Again, social connection and inclusion. I think I'm looking at the time, I'm going to go a little bit faster and not read these quotes. And maybe this presentation will be shared later because I want to make sure we have time for discussion. Does that sound good, Jenny?
It does. That's good.
Okay, good. So, and then for their mental health, they're seeing it, just the benefit of being in the gardens helps their mental health. Similarly, benefit for the STH practitioners, sense of purpose, the love of gardening. And what are some of the challenges? Well, there are a lot. There's funding and resource constraints. And as everybody knows here, we're needing to continuously look for funding, budget cuts. I know in the United States, funding across the board, across the country for mental health has been cut. Funding is always an issue, so many places, staffing and administration concerns, just volunteer staffs, how to manage the priorities, red tape, working with the bigger organizations. If you're trying to manage a garden, but you're in a big hospital, there's like a lot of issues like that came up. And then, you know, you're working in the garden and it's beautiful, but it is emotional when you're working with clients that have very real mental health issues. So how do you deal with the bigger groups? How do you take care of yourself? You're kind of alone in the garden space if you're the only practitioner there. So this is another theme. And then fourth, this came up quite a bit, was that this, and this is perfect because I know Trellis is developing a course, a certificate program, but there is a need to have STH often lacks recognition and respect, with gaps in standardization, credentials, and public perceptions. Desired training and professional development came across as horticulture skills, mental health training, and other professional development opportunities. I'm going to kind of jump through this. You can see this is what the areas are. This is what they're looking for more training in. So recommendations, in the end of the day, it's always about funding. That's always about funding. But a couple of things that came up with interviews with the practitioners and my interviews with the Trellis staff was knowing the benefits of gardening on people's mental health. And yet a lot of people, particularly a lot of younger people, think that gardening is something that their granny does or their mom does, and it's for older people, and gardening isn't hip. So what if we had a robust public health campaign and we had footballers and famous young, like Harry Styles, or, you know, young influencer people talking about, oh, I'm working on my garden and growing things. And so there's just a recommendation about a culture shift in presenting like a public health campaign about gardening is cool, gardening is hip, and getting off your screens and into the gardens and grow things and work with other people. So I think those are some of the things that came up. And then this is such an interesting topic. There's so many more avenues, just looking at the impact on men's mental health, or specifically about young people's mental health. Green and blue prescribing, there's a lot of articles I read, but when I went to my own GP, they had never heard of that. So what's really happening with this green prescribing? And if you get a prescription, what happens when you get that? Do you know what to do? So I think there's a lot of areas that are interesting to follow up. And then just my reflections, again, it was just such an incredible privilege to spend time to learn, dive deep into a topic I care about, because it started in a garden for me and my daughter, to see the impact that working in gardens has on both the practitioners, both the people, the participants, and just a real thank you to all the people I had the privilege of meeting with to just do this research. So I think I'm going to just jump to thank you and any questions. So there we go. And I'm going to stop my share screen if I can remember how to do that. Yeah, there we go. So a little longer one than I wanted, but hopefully there's time for questions and reflections. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And I'd love if anybody, I can't see all the names on the screen, but if anyone that I actually visited wants to chime in, I would love to hear your perspective also.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Suzanne. That was brilliant. Very, very interesting. And there was a lot of crossover between Alison's presentation yesterday in terms of what she found, that desire for people to have a kind of standardized way of monitoring and evaluating the work. So that was really interesting that came out again. Please, folks, put your hand up, pop some information in the chat, or just unmute yourself if you want to say something. But I see Charlie's got your hand up, so go for it, Charlie. Unmute yourself and go for it.
Yeah, and thank you very much. And I apologize. I put a link into DGS and I hit the button by mistake, so I apologize for that, Joe. No, my question is, with all your research and your goings about government, what has been the answer back? Have you had any research or any answer back in relation to what you've been able to bring to the game from government level? What has been their response?
For the research that I did for this dissertation, I really didn't, I just read literature and reports. I didn't have a lot of interviews or conversations with people in the government spaces. So I can't exactly answer that. I guess I can't appropriately answer that. I do know from my experience in Maine, where I'm from, I've had a lot of contact with representatives, with mayors who have been really, really supportive of our garden projects because it's sort of low-hanging fruit. It's not going to solve the crisis of mental health, but planting gardens and addressing mental health in this community-based way is like a really nice start to addressing this topic. So I'm sorry, I don't think I completely answered your question, but my conversations were with the practitioners and not so much with the folks in government and policy level.
Fiona,
Okay, thank you.
Fiona's got her hand up here, and I suspect she might be able to, help answer a bit of that question. Fiona, I don't know if you want to unmute there.
Thank you. Yeah, we have had an encouraging response from government. We had the First Minister of Scotland over to our new site at Scone Palace a couple of weeks ago, and he came over to see the walled garden site that we're hoping to develop with Defence Garden Scheme's involvement, as you know, Charlie. And he said, in fact, that our work and the work of therapeutic gardening projects generally was in perfect alignment with Scottish Government policy. And he said that more than once. So that was really encouraging. And we invited him because he's the local constituency MSP for the area, but also we get government funding for a little bit. And so we wanted to have him there in both roles, as it were. And also because we met with the Agriculture Minister in January, and he was also very supportive of what we do, and he suggested it. So he is the MSP for where our office is in Perth. It's slightly further south, sorry. And he suggested, well, you know, the First Minister is MSP for where Scone Palace is, and so why don't you get him along to the site? And we did, and it went really well. So, and we're also going to present at a big NHS national event in early June, to sort of suggest that we might be able to help with the system more broadly. If we could get into more NHS areas and services, we could really help move things towards a more preventative model if we could have a little bit of support to do that. And broadly, medical professionals are also supportive, but they just want to know how to refer, and that's the really tricky bit, you know, to set up all those systems that mesh with NHS systems so that they can send people off to therapeutic garden projects. Anyway, that's enough for me, but overall positive from our government.
Great, thanks, Fiona. There's one other question here from Lynette, and I'm not, if you want to unmute Lynette, please do, just to make sure I get the question right. You're asking about specific mental health training required.
Yes,
do you want to just explain?
I'll sort of elaborate that because it was a bit basic. Because it's STH is very person-centered, and there is that move to address mental health needs. For the practitioner, is there any specific training on mental health that would help the practitioners engage more efficiently or effectively? Is there any sort of mental health training that would point to that? I mean, I know mental health is such a broad spectrum, but is there any type of training that you think might help?
I personally, like I said, because quite a few entered as horticulturalists without any mental health training. I personally had no mental health background until I stepped into this all 10 years ago. And since then, I've taken every Talk Saves Lives youth mental health training. I think anybody in this space, I can't speak for the UK and Scotland, but I'm quite sure they have similar training programs. But I think anything that you can learn is only good. And just the basics, like there's a course put on by the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. It's called Talk Saves Lives, Know the Sign. There's so much about language. People don't know how to, they just don't even know the language. So I think any training is so important, and can only make people feel more comfortable and more confident about how to address these really important issues for sure.
Lovely, thanks, that's Suzanne. Yeah, Fiona's put a comment as well also about an assist suicide prevention in terms of trauma-informed practice. So again, that's another one that comes quite often in kind of training opportunities, I think, is that trauma-informed practice. So thank you. I'm just looking to see if we've got... Jenny's asked if we were able to share your slides, just because I know obviously, because we will send an email out tomorrow to follow up from this session. Is it okay to share those slides with everyone that's...
Oh, for sure. Yep,
Yeah.
for sure. I'm happy to.
Great, that's wonderful.
And again, I apologize. Sometimes I get a little overexcited and I talk too much. And then I took a peek at my phone. I'm like, oh, so I'm sorry I had to rush through at the end. So I think sharing the slides would absolutely be nice.
Perfect. And is there anywhere that we can see your research study or the outcomes from your research?
Yes, I've been having conversations with Emma and Autumn, the faculty member, about publishing the dissertation. I don't know if all dissertations, Emma, maybe you know to help me. Maybe they're all in the library access, or I could, it's long. I can also like send a summarized or something. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm happy to share it with anybody, but if you want just the shortened version, I can also just, share key points or something too.
Brilliant, thank you. Emma, if you want to jump in, do.
Yeah, so I think I was speaking with Autumn from Edinburgh University yesterday, actually, and I think she is keen, Suzanne, hopefully to meet soon to see if we could pull something together. But in the meantime, we have a copy of your dissertation as well, so people can get in touch if you're happy with that, if they'd like to read. It has some amazing quotes all the way through it. I loved reading it.
Yeah.
Like you say, it is long, but super interesting.
The one part I didn't have time to step into, but in my dissertation, I start with just the history of gardens. I mean, you think about it, Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the Garden of Eden, Zen gardens in ancient Japan, just the role that gardens have played throughout time. And then this, how they've shifted. Benjamin Rush, who is a University of Edinburgh graduate, the father of modern psychiatry. He signed the Declaration of Independence in my country. He was the first person to write about the healing properties of nature, getting nature out of the wards into nature. So I had fun with the dissertation, not only meeting amazing people and sitting in beautiful garden spaces, but I had so much fun during the literature review, looking at the history of healing gardens. So for that reason, it may be fun to take a peek at, because I go into a little bit of the history of gardens in general.
Okay, thank you.